Our team members take pride in our roots. We grew up on farms, we live on farms, and we serve farms every day. At Armor Animal Health, our veterinarians help you detect diseases through our state-of-the-art lab. Our pharmacy then helps deliver the right solutions to keep your herd healthy. With locations across the United States, we have the ability to supply thousands of products to your door. When you kick off your boots at night, know that defending your herd isn't our job, but a way of life.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this week's Have You Heard? Armor Animal Health's live video series. This week, we are talking about equine vaccinations, how to use them, when you should be using them, and finding the right fit for what you are doing with your horse. I am Breck Kruger, outside sales rep for Armor Animal Health. I reside in Lake Lillian, Minnesota with my husband, Brandon, and our two sons, Bodie and Bronson Kruger. Our family shows, trains, and sells ranch sorting horses and all-around cow horses all across the United States. We are very passionate about the equine industry and all that it involves. Before we start, I would like to remind you about our winter word giveaway. Listen for today's keywords, collect all 5 keywords from our December and January Have You Heard shows, and enter for a chance to win a $250 Armor gift card. Watch, listen, and register by January 26th for your chance to win. Go to www.armoranimalhealth.com/Have You Heard. Today, I'm joined with Dr. Jim Heier and his beautiful horse, Greta. Dr. Jim is one of our professional service veterinarians. I'm excited to be here with you today, Jim, talking about something we're both passionate about. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your beautiful horse?
Hello, Breck. I'm happy to be here. Welcome to Heier Farms Pertrons and happy holidays. I am Dr. Jim Heier. I'm a professional services veterinarian with Armor for the last 2 years. I practice large animal medicine outside of Green Bay in northeast Wisconsin for 30 years. Previous to that, I live in Denmark, Wisconsin, about 8 miles southeast. My wife, Stephanie, and I have approximately 12 to 20 Percheron horses on our farm at any given time. I've been around horses my whole life. My grandfather had a team for farm work. I put myself through vet school, driving horses and giving tours up on Mackinac Island, the world's largest horse herd. And we've got into showing horses for the last 20 years, 5 state fairs, having a great time. It accumulated in 2014 with the world champion Percheron stallion. And we gained this young lady right here. This is River Oak Greta. She is a Percheron mare. She was a 2-time All-American and world champion yield mare. She's going to be our beautiful model today. So if you're ready to go, let's get started.
Sounds great, Jim. Gotta love you and your wife's accomplishment. You have a beautiful place and horses. Dr. Jim, there's so many different vaccines on the market, as you well know. How do you know which one to choose or which one is right for your horse?
It depends. Choosing vaccines is like an insurance policy. What are you comfortable about protecting your horse against? What are you comfortable not protecting your horse against? So look at it this way. If you do a lot, your horses move around a lot, they're at a higher risk of getting sick. Vaccines, you will say, get expensive, but what's the value of one of your favorite horses? And you and I both know how much time we spent with young horses getting them trained to where we want. So the last thing you want to do, and I've experienced this, is have a horse die from a neurological disease. So you need to choose what you're comfortable with protecting. Remember, the vaccination cost is very minor compared to the value of your mare or your horse or your gelding and what you're going to do with it, plus all the time that you spent doing it.
Absolutely.
If you're ready to go, Breck, we can keep going. If you have other questions, just feel free and we will be happy to answer them.
Yeah. Jim, can you talk a little bit about the core vaccines that we would vaccinate for?
Well, we take one little step. When we're going to talk about core vaccines, we need to kind of remember why we're going to do this. We need to vaccinate against the diseases, again, like we talked about, that we want to protect. We need to have a healthy horse in order for the immune system to function. And then we're going to need to do our timing to make sure we get the most effectiveness out of doing it. The core vaccines really reach right into the situation. The core diseases, or vaccines, as you may call them. The first one is tetanus. Very important horses, very susceptible. The vaccine works great. It's an annual vaccine. It protects your horse. The next ones we talk about are the encephalitises. They are viral neurological diseases. There is no treatment. There has been some Eastern encephalitis running throughout the Midwest. There's Eastern encephalitis, there's Western encephalitis, and there's Venezuelan encephalitis. Venezuela tends to be more in the southwestern part of the country. Again, there is no treatment, but the vaccines really work good protecting them. And that way you don't lose your horse. The next thing that I think about when I'm doing these, I need to do a little cheat sheet here once in a while.
That's okay.
It's not a core, but I call it a package deal. It's your rhino flu. This is just like with the COVID. It's the same thing with influenza. We want to protect our horses because the more they get out, the more we want to keep them protected against contact between horses, contact between people, contact between equipment. They tend to last only 6 months. They are viral. If you do a lot more than showing or you're in an area, you might want to boost them. The other one that is definitely a core vaccine that we would like to talk about is West Nile virus. It is also a neurological vaccine or disease, that there is no treatment, but the vaccine works great. Now, how many times you need to vaccinate a year depends on where you live. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But for right now, if you're up here in Green Bay, we vaccinate once a year. These are insect-borne viruses. So it's all dependent upon when the insect explosion happens. That's
Great
the core.
explanation of the core vaccines, Dr. Jim, and their descriptions. Is there anything else that we would need to vaccinate our horses for? We should be concerned about protecting our horses with that you can think of?
There's one that I'd like to add into our list that we hadn't talked about, Breck, and that's rabies. I like to do it in the fall. We all get skunks,
Absolutely.
raccoons, foxes laying in barns. It's very cheap to vaccinate with. We can do it in the fall away from all the other ones so we can spread our vaccines out. That's one we should add to our list. Another one we can talk about is strangles. You and I both have horses on the road. We get a lot of contact between strange animals. Strangles is a bacterial disease of the upper respiratory area and the guttural pouches in here. The best vaccine is actually not an injectable in that one. In my opinion, it's an intranasal that goes up here. The next one we should talk about is for those of you that are breeders, is a rhinopneumonitis abortion disease. It's similar to the rhino respiratory. This vaccine is called pneumobore. It's in short duration, only lasts 2 months. So what we like to do is when your mare is bred 5 months, 7 months, and 9 months, we like to give the vaccine. So that works out really, really nice. Other diseases that people like to protect against are Potomac horse fever, which tends to rear its head later summer and fall. Depends on where you live and if you like to do a vaccine against it. And just checking to make sure I don't have anything else. No, that worked good. Now these vaccines, when we do them, some of them, like the cores, are usually grouped in combo vaccines. Different combo vaccines have different groups for protection against different diseases. So you might have what they call a 9-way, which might have your tetanus, Eastern, Western, 2 types of flu, 2 types of rhino respiratory, and West Nile. The 5-way that people talk about have all those, but minus the West Nile. You might have just a separate rhino flu if you're boosting for a show. Some people might just do an Eastern, Western, and a tetanus. We're going to go back to your original question, Breck. What we want to do,
Great, Jim.
what you really want to do is match up your vaccines in your combo vaccines with what you want to protect against. So that works out really, really nice. Excuse me one moment.
Now,
All right.
Jim,
Yeah.
I know that we've talked before and you've said that how many vaccinations or injectable vaccines do you recommend giving to a horse at any one time, say?
There's been a lot of work in immunology research over the last years in multiple species. We'd like to keep it limited to 2. That seems to be the best. We get the best immune response. We also have the least amount of reactions or abnormal, how would you say, dysfunction to the vaccines. So I like to only give 2 at a time. I prefer to give 1 on each side of the horse, but if you can do it 2 on the same side but separate it out. And then if you need to come back, I don't want to give another vaccine for a minimum of 2 weeks to allow that immune system to fully function.
Yeah, I agree with you. Our key word for our winner word giveaway is Greta. Thanks for breaking those down for us, Jim. Now that we have a better idea or understanding of what we should be vaccinating for, can you talk a little bit more about what age we should start the vaccination process at?
That's a fantastic question. And it's kind of a loaded question because it depends on how the dam or the mother of the foal was vaccinated. If the mother of the foal had been vaccinated 3-4 months previous to when a foal is due, we can vaccinate the foal at 4 months and then booster again at 5 months. The reason for that is there won't be any protective antibodies in that colostrum. Colostrum is formed 4 weeks prior to when the foal is born. So if that mare had her shot a month prior to foaling, which is what we do on our farm, there will be antibodies in the colostrum that will protect against these core vaccines out until 8 months of age. And that's when we want to start vaccinating those horses. So like I had a colt born in June. He will not get his first vaccines now until probably February because he had maternal colostrum. He is protected and it worked. It's very important and it's a great question to know how your mares are vaccinated affects your colts.
Absolutely. That was very helpful, Dr. Jim. I know that it's a question that a lot of people struggle with the answer to. So I think that you did a really good job of explaining it and breaking it down for us. I'm wondering if you can tell our viewers what they can expect after vaccinating their horses. Do you have any recommendations to help make vaccinating easier for their horses?
Well, let's start with what you're going to do when you do vaccinate. Sometimes the biggest complaint I've heard over the 30 years of practice was this vaccine made my horse sick, made it slow, made it whatever for a couple of days. When you vaccinate an animal, it's common for them to be a little lethargic for a short period of time, not longer. And there's 2 types of reactions. There's the initial one where you can have a severe reaction like they're worried about with the COVID vaccine that's being given in the UK. So they always keep EpiPens around for those people. Those are immediate emergencies. Then you have the ones that last 2-3 days. The ones that last 2-3 days are the ones that we want to talk about. You need to report that to your vet, your animal health service, professional services vet, or the manufacturing, so we can report that to help them with the manufacturing. Sometimes it's not the vaccine's fault. There are multiple reasons why we can get these reactions that take longer than that typical 12 hours time. Excuse me, get a little tongue-tied. So what you can get is they get slow, lethargic, don't want to eat. Things that can cause that to happen. We can give too many vaccines at one time. We can turn around and we can vaccinate in the afternoon on an 80-degree day with 95% humidity. Very bad idea. We can have vaccinated with a vaccine that was expired and didn't realize it. We could vaccinate with a vaccine that the temperature in the refrigerator was off. Report it to your vet. Talk to somebody. Get it worked out. It could potentially even be that maybe that horse is a little subpar either nutritionally, meaning maybe your trace minerals and vitamins are off a little bit. There's certain ones we like to talk about, but that's something for you to have a discussion with your vet. Same thing, we don't ever want to vaccinate a horse that's not healthy. We need this to work on the immune system.
Now, Jim, when we vaccinate our horses, we generally treat them almost like a kid being vaccinated, and we give them anywhere from 2 to 4 days off, just depending on the horse, just because we tend to believe that they may be or maybe not a little muscle sore. Do you agree with that, or you have any other thoughts for us on what we should be doing with that?
That's a great question, and it's a little bit of a loaded question. There's a couple ways of doing it. Historically, people like to do that. They give the horses off. They left them alone. It's no different than when people used to get shots back in the 60s. Kids, you'd be sore in your arm. There's 2 types of soreness. There's total body soreness, or you can get a localized swelling because the horse jumped around when you gave your shot. The localized one's going to take a little time. Cold compresses will help take that down. We'll deal with that. That we can deal with. As far as the overall soreness, there's 2 schools of thought now. The old school was to leave them alone, let them work their way through it. The new school that is just recently in the last few years talks about the fact we want these animals to get out, move around. You can lightly ride them. You can lightly drive them. I'm not telling you to go whole hog heavy training, but we want to get circulation going. If we get circulation going, the blood flows. The blood flows, the antigens get picked up. They get pulled out of this area. They get the whole immune system working. They get out of that soreness quicker. I'm not telling you to switch from what you're doing, Breck, but it's something to consider and talk about when you guys are vaccinating, and keep your eyes open for these great articles that are coming down the pike.
That's great advice, Dr. Jim. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the timing of vaccinations. We've always vaccinated our horses in February or March. Is there an ideal time frame that we should be looking at?
The ideal time frame depends on where you live. Remember, most of these diseases are dependent upon your mosquito population. So if you live in Wisconsin, up in Green Bay where I live, typically mosquitoes come out maybe in a typical year the 15th of May. I want my vaccines in by the 15th of April. I want 4 weeks to allow the immune system to react to them vaccines and get itself stimulated and up and running. If you live down in Missouri, where I've got a good friend, they may have mosquitoes by the 1st of April. So he needs to vaccinate by the 1st of March. And it's also, as far as the timing goes, if you have things like the rhino flu, if you're only going to show for 4 months out of the year like we did, that's fine, the last 6 months. But if you're going to have that big fall show in November, you're going to want to come in and vaccinate 2 to 4 weeks prior to that show, because you know that duration of protection is going to be gone. So you got to think through what you're doing, and every year is a little different. And it depends on how often you're taking your horses off the farm. That's where the timing comes in. And it also affected, like we talked about, with the foals and the mares with protection. On our farm, again, we vaccinate everything 1 month prior. And people may wonder why, Breck, we didn't talk about this, but why we're talking about equine vaccines 2 weeks before Christmas. The universal birth date for foals is January 1st. Those people that are big showers have manipulated the reproductive cycle by working on lights. That's a whole nother program. But by working on the lights, they're going to foal out them first couple weeks in January. So right now, we need to be vaccinating these mares to get protection in that colostrum for those colts. That's why we're talking about equine vaccines in December. So that's where the timing comes in. It all depends on each individual farm. There is no two things the same. There's no two sites the same, because people live all over the place. I've got friends in Mexico that might be completely different than my friends that live in northern Canada. That's the long version, sorry.
No, I think that you're absolutely right on everything that you said, Jim. It was very helpful conversation. I know a lot of people wonder if they should be vaccinating their own horses, or if they can do it on their own, probably more than anything, or if they need the help of a vet. Do you have any thoughts on this, or can you share any helpful tips on doing your own vaccinations?
We're going to use Greta for a model here in just a minute, but here's my philosophy. If you're comfortable handling your horses and you're comfortable doing the basic medications for your horses and handling a syringe, vaccinate yourself if you want. If you're not comfortable, hire a vet to do it. That's cool. That's not a problem. It's totally up to you. Now, believe it or not, I'm a vet. I own on an average 16 horses on the farm. I have not vaccinated a horse in the 22 years that I've been married. My wife does it all by herself. The horses know her. She even does the intranasal, which I'll show you in a minute. So sites, if you're going to give vaccinations, this is where I would like you to do. There's a couple places to go. Some people like to go, if you follow me back here, like to give them back here in the rump. Sometimes they like to give them back here in the leg. Remember, a horse is a flight or fight animal. So if you're going to hit them, and they're not used to being hit back here, and she's tied up, she got nowhere to go, so she's going to turn around and kick me in the legs. So get them conditioned ahead of time. Play with them. Deal with them. It's no different when you go in to deal with the udder on your mares. That area I don't prefer. Most areas people like to do is up here in the neck. Now, if you get a good view of here, we're going to take Greta and we're going to make her into 4 quadrants. That way and this way, half. The reason is, up here there's very little muscle and a lot of bone. We don't want to hit bone, cause more reaction, especially localized. Below this is all vascular, neurological. We can cause all kinds of grief. The best area is back here in this hind quarter area that we want to give vaccinations. One of the worst places to give, and a lot of people still do it, is because it's handy and they can hide things, is down here. There is a good immunological reason why not to. Number one, no matter how much you clean that area, you're going to carry something in with your needle. And you're going to get abscesses and swelling. The second thing is this is a lot of connective tissue down here, not a lot of muscling. It doesn't absorb as well for the immune system, so it doesn't function as well. Now, as far as giving the vaccines go, I'm going to show you right off the bat, Breck, how we're going to give them. I believe I'm going to demonstrate with the screwdriver because I forgot to bring a pen out from the house. An old Louisiana vet I had in vet school taught me this. Horses don't like surprises. Animals in general don't like surprises. So what you do is you go in that back quarter and you pinch. You pinch. In the meantime, you come in with the syringe and you slowly slide in. Do not jerk. Do not poke. You slide in the muscle. You pull back on a syringe to make sure you're not in a vein, because these vaccines can cause reaction. You do what you need to, and you go with it. If you're going to do an intranasal, it's very simple. Excuse me. An intranasal is like getting a COVID test. It's going to tick a little bit, so they're not happy about it. You have a long cannula, like a strangles vaccine. You get a hole into a small hand twitch. You reach in, you deliver your vaccine, you're all done. The biggest take home from this is where to give it, and the fact that you precondition them early. If you raise colts, the first time they get a shot is like the first time they get bled for coggins. You need to precondition them for all this. Make it a happy experience. It'll make life easier for everybody. I know I jumped ahead a little bit on you, Breck. Bring us back on board.
Good. Greta's been a great model for you today, Jim.
Greta is
very helpful.
She's been a very good kid's horse. Her last roll into the arena she was shown by a 4-year-old little girl.
That's pretty cool.
Great horse.
Jim, let's take a few minutes and answer some questions from our audience. And also, as a reminder to our audience, please feel free to place your comments or questions below so we can get them answered. One of the questions from the audience is, do I need to booster the vaccine?
Fantastic question. And we should talk about that. We talked about foals. First time out, they always need a booster. We would prefer 4 weeks, even though the label sometimes will say 2 weeks. That's that new research again in the last few years said 4 weeks apart gives you a better immunological response. Now, here's a couple of example cases. Number one, you bought a horse, went to an auction, have no idea what the vaccination history is. Treat that horse like it's unvaccinated. It doesn't hurt to give it a booster. But if you do not give it a booster because it was never vaccinated, you have a poor immunological response to that vaccine. The other one is say you had family emergency, something happened, you vaccinated 2 years ago, something happened that you couldn't get it done last year, you got hurt, whatever. The following year, come back and do them with a booster. Get them back on board. Typically, these vaccines last about 12 months, give or take a little bit.
Jim, another question that we have is, what can we expect as the cost for a single vaccine? So one horse.
Depends on what you protect against. I know we have some of our vaccines for the 9 ways, which is the Eastern, Western core vaccines, Eastern encephalitis, Western encephalitis, tetanus, 2 types of flu, 2 types of rhino, and West Nile. We can do that for somewhere in that $40 to $45 range. And then you get into the strangles and the rhino. It depends on the situation, depends on the quantity, but you start adding them up. The bottom line is you're going to be able to do your annual vaccines, even on a broodmare that's going to need more shots, for less than $150 if they're all well placed. A single horse, say if you only have a single horse and you like to go riding, whatever, you can protect your horse pretty well for less than $50.
I was just going to say that the cost to protect a horse is relatively inexpensive, especially when you compare it to what the vet bills could be for an unprotected horse.
And the other thing we got to remember, Breck, is even in the world that you and I both live in, it's amazing how many of these horses, particularly the expensive ones, are not vaccinated. You need to take care of your own stuff and protect your own things, because people will spend $100,000 on a horse and not protect it. Take care of it. It's, like you said, very inexpensive and well worth the money.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, it looks like that's all the questions that we have for today. Do you have any last minute thoughts or closing remarks you'd like to make?
Remember when we started, we said we're going to make this efficient and cost effective. We're not using cheap vaccines, but we're going to use them in a proper timing, proper placement, and in a healthy animal to get the most results that we can. Armor Animal Health carries a full line of equine vaccines, wormers, and other things. We have a sales staff that has horses. We have veterinarians on staff that are happy to answer questions. Everybody probably doesn't have 16 to 20 horses like I do, but we have the same experience as you. Reach out, ask questions. We're here to help. Thanks, Breck.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Jim and Greta, for being a part of our show today. We hope our audience learned some useful information. Our videos are recorded, so feel free to go back and look on our website, Facebook page, YouTube channel, and make sure to share it with your friends. Next week's Have You Heard is all about colostrum management. What would a rancher do? Join Dr. Travis White and Joe Groston next Thursday, December 17th at 3 p.m. to learn more. Have a great night and happy holidays.
Happy holidays.